Today we're going to learn how to visualize the connections between nodes using arrows, change their appearance when they're dragged, style the components using CSS, and make it so the arrowheads can be toggled on and off. So I have a to-do list that we can work through over the next however many minutes. The first thing I want to do is create a simple line which connects the two nodes together. So in our project, let's create a new package called myControls. And in the package we want to put a new class called Arrow. And make it extend group. We need to add a line. Some coordinate variables. Put in a constructor. The first thing we need to do is set the variables. Now add the line to the group. Now we want to add listeners to all of our coordinate variables, so whenever they're updated, we can update the main line too. Now we'll just create this method. And we'll want to call it in here as well. In update, we'll just set the main line's coordinates to the coordinate variables. The setAll method is different from the addAll method, in that it will delete all the points first before adding these points. The addAll method just adds some. Now let's go back to our controller, and we want to create a create and add arrow method. Now we want to bind our arrow coordinates to the coordinates of the vertices. Oh, and we'll need to create getters and setters. Press Alt Insert if you're in IntelliJ to do this. we'll add arrow to the graph. Now, wherever I created an additional node by dragging, I'll want to create an arrow as well. But first I'm going to change vertex temp to vertex 1, and then put in a vertex 2, and a global arrow as well. Now I'll want to put this vertex in a variable. Change this to vertex 2. I'll test that. Oh, I forgot the most important bit. I need to add the arrow. Okay. So let's add it for the other drag events. Okay, let's test that. Right, that's working fine. Something I now want to do is scale the arrows in a bit to about here, because when we add the arrowheads, if we leave them where they are, they're going to be obscured by the node. So we'll just adjust it so it's about here. So that's next on the to-do list, and it requires very basic trigonometry. If you remember SOHCAHTOA, you'll be fine. Okay, so if you imagine a point here at x1, y1, and another point here at x2, y2, and then an arrow between them. Now say we want to scale this in by 20 pixels. We first need to calculate the angle of the line, which is easy enough, which is the inverse tan of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Next we want to find out the coordinates of this point here and this point here, which will be equal to x1 plus the cosine of theta times the hypotenuse, which is 20. And y3 will be y1 plus the sine of theta times the hypotenuse. And this point here will be more or less the same, except it will be minus. So x4 equals x2 minus the cosine of theta times 20, and y4 equals y2 minus sine theta times 20. Okay, so in the arrow class we want to create a scale method which returns a double array, and it takes the coordinates, first thing we need is theta, then we return the double array, and let's create a constant for the scalar. Now in the update method we need to run our coordinates through the scale method. Let's test that. Okay, so now we want to add the arrowheads. This requires a little more trigonometry. So if we have a line coming down this way, we know how to calculate the angle of the slope. And say we want to create an arrowhead which fans out 20 degrees in both directions. The angle of this line is theta minus 20 degrees, and this line is theta plus 20 degrees. If we make this line, say, 10 pixels, then the calculation, just like before, is x1 plus cosine of theta minus 20 degrees times 10, and then it will be y1 plus sine of theta minus 20 times 10, and the same for this side, and over here it will be x2 minus cos of theta minus 20 times 10. Okay, so let's add 2 more lines. Cos head A and head B. So we first want to calculate the slope, the angle of the line, so I'll just steal this line here. Next we need to calculate the points of the arrowhead. And let's create another constant. Next, let's add these points. And now we'll get the third point. And we'll do the same for the other arrowhead. And now we just need to add them to the group. And I think that's it. I'll run it. There we go. Next, the vertices must have a reference to all the arrows that are connected to it. So we'll open the vertex class and we'll add a observable list. Called edges. And then in the controller, where we create the arrow, we can just add it to both of the vertices. Now we need to make the arrows deletable. Currently we can delete the nodes, but then the arrows are left behind. So the method where we delete a node is here, and this is the if condition for it. So we'll just add code to delete the arrows in here. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay. Next, we want to be able to style the arrow in CSS, and we want it to be styled differently depending on whether it's been dragged or not. So go back into the arrow class, and we'll create a method called set up style class structure. Now I want the user to have the ability to style the heads of the arrow differently from the arrow body. So first of all, we have to give the three components of the arrow a style class. Now if we go into mystyles.css, let's see if this works. That's fine. Next, I want the ability to style the arrow heads differently from the body, so I can copy this. Now in CSS, next I want it so when a node is dragged, the node itself and all the edges connected to it are red. I'll delete these styles for now, and we can make use of these classes later on. Now I'll go into the controller, and I'll make it that whenever a node is dragged, its style class is set to dragged, and when it's released, it's set back to normal. Now something that might trip you up is here we're setting the style class for arrow, but arrow is a group, But what we actually want to set is the style for these three elements. What we have to do is set it up so that whenever the group's style changes, it updates these three as well. Now let's create the dragged style. And I'll give it a opacity of 0.4. And let's see if this works. There we are. There. Now we just want to set it up for all drag events. Now this is the right click drag option, so we have to target all of the edges of the node. Okay, let's see if that's it. No. Ow. And change that to vertex. Okay. Let's say if vertex 2 is not null, there we go. Last thing I want to do is set up the arrowheads so their visibility can be toggled on and off. So go into arrow, I want to create two simple Boolean properties. And give it a default of true. And we'll create the getters and setters, alt insert. And all we have to do is bind the head visibility to these simple Boolean properties. And just so I can test it, I'll set the vertices on action event. And with each press it will toggle the arrowheads. It's working fine. I can delete this. And that's it. Well done if you made it this far. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to follow the series, and take care.